Let's see what we got here. Bingo. Hello. Okay. I believe we are happening, as far as I can tell. I will assume that that is the case, unless proven otherwise. Good evening. Nice to have you here with me. I'm Tad, as usual. Not just as usual, I'm Tad every damn day, and that's my burden to bear, not yours, but that's okay. I'm glad to have you with me anyway. It makes bearing the burden a little bit easier. And let me see what else we've got going here. Let me check in, see if we are. Yes, we do seem to be recording. And I see I've already had a few folks check in already. So, Isaac, hello, Isaac. Claudia, hello, Claudia. Barb Ann has checked in. And Becca Werlin, hello, Becca. Ray, good to see you, Ray, as always. Christy Sanders, and is it Jaza, Yaza, or Jasa? You'll have to let me know. I've got Jaza, or Jasa, or Yasa. Majeski. It depends on which part of the world and how recently the name is from. So feel free to let me know. And Penny Davies, hello, hello. And who else has just showed up? Susan, I already said hello to Susan, of course, and Timothy. Hello, Timothy, checking in from Calgary, and Medardo, and and of course it's just pushing things down, and Angie, pushing things down and making it hard to find out who has said hello and who has done whatever. Anyway, not to worry. I don't care. I mean, I do care in the sense that I would. Sorry about that. I was just messing with my glasses. Just in the sense that I would prefer to be able to see who's out there, but meaning I don't care in the sense that it doesn't really change what I'm doing on this end, which is basically just hanging out, reading, and talking some talk. So. Before I start, what did I report to people last week? I am mostly just it's been a very busy week, as I explained already. Some of you have already heard me say my dad was back in the hospital, still is in the hospital, but has moved out of intensive care and into whatever they call it. That's the and so he's gone a floor upstairs, and we went and saw him yesterday, and so that's a good thing in a difficult situation. And what else has been happening this week? Just the usual stuff. Just the absolute horrifying tragedy for Johnny of not just the Fourth of July, but the before and after fireworks. In a sense, the Fourth of July was just a thing he had to get through, but then the others arrived by surprise. Just people in the neighborhood just suddenly setting off fireworks with no warning or anything. And poor big dog Johnny is not good with sudden noises of any kind. He doesn't even like rain on the roof. So suddenly someone's setting off some loud kaboom thing just down the block somewhere. Not good for his mental health. So that doesn't seem to have happened today. We're hoping that that is now done, that everybody who had fireworks has used their fireworks, and we'll let poor Johnny go back to his normal worrying about everything else phase, but at least not. See what else? We went out to see some friends today, which was very nice. Got to spend time with them. It was a dual birthday of a friend of ours's mom and daughter, and the daughter was 22 and the mom is 98. The mom was the other person who was basically whose house I spent most of my time in. I mentioned that we had lost another close family friend, and then Jody, who I saw today, who has just turned 98, Jody, in my later sort of junior high school and high school life, became the second mom figure because we were always over at my friend's house. And so Jody and her husband, Chris, were both very patient with us. I'm sure we were difficult. I know we were difficult. Occasionally, we might have at least been amusing, but, my friend and I used to wonder, why is it that like the dog doesn't do anything and people come and feed the dog? And we'd come home after high school and we would say, like, maybe if we just lay on the floor like the dog, somebody will feed us. And so we would lie on the floor in the kitchen with our pause in the air. And after about 10 minutes or so, we would realize, wait a minute, we're the only people here. Who is going to feed us? So that's the kind of thing we were always doing. And Jody was very sweet for all those years, putting up with us. Let me think. Anything else I wanted to talk about? Yeah, there was something that interested me today that I was going to mention to you guys, but I haven't thought of it yet. If it comes to me, I will let you know, or I haven't remembered it yet. And anybody else I haven't said hello to yet? In this group, yes, I see one already. Where did it go again? Come back. Oh, you stupid thing. I don't know why I even bother trying to deal with Facebook. Meta is complicated and difficult. Anyway, so Margaret, hello, Margaret. Good to see you. Margaret has showed up. Once again, it's giving me the permanent spinning wheel thing that it's not letting me see the comments. And Heike, oh my goodness, hello, Heike. I haven't seen you in a long time. Heike, an old friend and neighbor, just checked in. So hello, good to see you. For those who don't know what I'm doing here, it's as with most of my life, the answer is not much and nothing very useful, but I am reading, and mostly reading from my own stuff just because I don't have to worry about violating any other writer's hard-earned copyright. Although I'm getting darn near the end. I mean, we've been doing this for 3 years, and I'm getting darn near the end of things to read. However, that said, not yet. So I will be reading more from Brothers of the Wind tonight. God, was there anything else? I know there was something else. God, it's so frustrating. Tonight and not being able to write it down because I was out of the house at the time, and I am an old person, and that is not my first thought. As always, I mean, I do that sometimes. I make notes on my phone, but it's not always my first thought, and especially not when I'm in the middle of a conversation with someone else and saying, "Ooh, that's an interesting thing I wanted to talk about." So, what else is there? Not really a lot. I hope that those of you who are here in the States, that you had a good 4th of July. We did nothing except dog sit, and I spent a great deal of July 4th walking around the house, mopping up the trails of drops of doggy saliva, because Johnny, when he gets panicky, the ears go back, the tail goes down, the mouth is open, the tongue is out, and he's going, and, just dripping all over. It would be almost cute if it wasn't so sad. It's hard to find a habit of a dog's cute when that habit is caused by terror, and any unnecessary noises terrify John, but fireworks are the worst. Except for maybe thunder and lightning, but this is a dog who, as I said, doesn't even like rain or wind, anything. So poor guy. As you can see, I feel for this dog. I am very deeply emotionally attached, which is either indicative of the unhealthiness of my emotional attachments or something. But I suspect it's what I always refer to, which I've referred to here to people many times, I know, as the Charlie Brown Christmas tree syndrome. That dog has definitely got me in the Charlie Brown Christmas tree syndrome. So, although he's not quite like the tree in the sense that nobody would want him, but he's definitely a dog you have to put some work into to take care of. But as far as I'm concerned, it is massively repaid by all the things that dogs do, like just be so damn happy when you come home, even if you've only been gone for half an hour. Because, of course, in the dog mind, when you are gone, when you are away, when the pack has been splintered, never be fixed. And, this is why it's really difficult going on trips, because I know that my family are always sending me pictures of the dog sleeping next to the front door, and when I know I'm just like, oh, Johnny's just waiting for you to come back. My heartstrings are tugged until they're ready to snap. Okay, so I'm trying to think. I literally cannot think of what the other thing was I was going to chit chat with y'all about. It was something of vaguely technical nature having to do with writing, but I must remember it, and when I remember it, I'll tell you. So, um, oh, and there's a couple of other folks showed up. Tim Speckens and Carl Dersham. Hello to both of you. Good to see you. And Emily. Oh, hello, Emily. Emily says, every time I hear Charlie Brown and Eeyore, I'm reminded this is my place. Us. Jack Barucha says, my dog also gets sad when we go away. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the whole thing with dogs. Don't have dogs. Don't keep dogs if you don't want to be emotionally involved with an animal and have them be emotionally involved with you. I love cats, and cats also are complicated person because, excuse me, either because they're just too cool for school or whatever. You know, cats are much more laid back. And yes, they'll let you know that they're happy you're back or whatever, but it's in a completely different way. And, you know, they will also check on you from time to time. But in my experience, my dogs are like really, it's important to them to know what's going on with me. And if there's something wrong, if I'm, you know, not happy or something, they sense that, and they, you know, they come over and try and nudge you out of it, or in Johnny's case, whack you with his paw, his gigantic paw, until you know, he feels that he has sufficiently knocked the sadness out of you somehow. And again, don't get me wrong, I have cats, although at the moment mine is down the hall and not living with me anymore. And cats are also full of all these kinds of things as well. But there's a kind of naked emotionality to dogs that perhaps because I'm a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm a bit of a controlled person myself. You know, I mean, I'm somebody who doesn't hugely express my emotions about things, and I don't tend to swing wildly up or down. Because of that, I think there's something that I find particularly charming about the absolute naked honesty of dogs, unless they're trying to distract you from something and like go steal some food or something. I've seen that too. But most of the time, they're just brutally honest in terms of what they're thinking and feeling. And I don't know. There's just something that really works for me with that. But like I said, and the reason I started this whole tirade in the first place is, you know, don't get a dog if all you want is an occasional companion, because that is not what you're signing up for when you get dogs. You are signing up for a companion who wants to be with you and do things with you and, you know, get regular attention from you in many different ways. So I'm sure all of you know that. Certainly all of you who own dogs already know that. Okay, so with all of this said, and with everything seemed to Jack's trying to help me with words for cats. Reserved, Jack says. Stoic, yeah, both of those. Those are just absolutely fine. Um, so yes, cats are a bit more reserved, more stoic. Actually, stoicism is another interest of mine, but I won't. Fascinating periods, not periods, but one of the most fascinating particular, well, not eras, but a particularly fascinating time in history was during the reign of Emperor Nero, and his tutor, who had in many ways formed him in the early days, was one of the most famous of all the Stoic philosophers, a man named Seneca. And then Seneca had to sort of stand by while Nero not only began to sort of drift away from his teachings, but began to, you know, become a really horrifying ruler in many ways. And it's always struck me as being really an interesting thing that Seneca had to kind of stand there and watch this, what he'd thought he had, you know, kind of trained the perfect emperor, you know, who would have been the you know, the right person ruling over the world's biggest empire in the right way, and then to see basically the whole thing fall apart and go extremely bad. It must have been very difficult and very strange, and some of the things that he didn't ever say because he couldn't. I really wish I knew. I wish I knew what his secret thoughts were as that part of Roman history unfolded. Anyway, I'm off on one of my babbles again, but I will, if I think of the thing that I was trying to think of, I will tell you. But what I'm going to do instead right now is start reading. And what I am reading from is Brothers of the Wind. For those of you who were not around or have not had a chance to listen to the previous episode, basically what happened is the Scythi, including Hakatri and his brother Inaluki, the Scythi, with Hakatri and his brother Inaluki, have went into this valley to try and have at least a look at the dragon that the mortals, the Hernestiri mortals, had told them is this big, terrifying monster. And Inaluki, in particular, had not believed it and had rode off on his own, or had ridden off on his own, to go and find and kill this dragon, because his parents had kind of said, like, hush up, child. And he took it personally. And so Hakatri and many others, including the narrator of this story, Pamon Kes, who is what's called a changeling or Tanuka Daya, not a mortal, not one of the Scythi, but this other group or race of people. Pamon Kes is kind of lifted to such a high position. He's Hakatri, and not only found the dragon found them, and just wreaked horrible violence on them and killed several of their party and wounded several others, and they just barely escaped the party, in large part, escaped the valley in large part because of Pamon Kes finding Hakatri and saving him after he had been struck and thrown away by the dragon. And so then they have been trying to figure out what they would do next. They had wounded people that needed help. Inaluki had made it very clear that because he had sworn to deal with this dragon in a kind of lighthearted way, that now he could never go this oath until the dragon was dead. And of course, everybody is, they know that they're a tiny party that are not going to be able to handle. And long story short, they are now on their way to Mezutua, otherwise known as the Silver Home, another major city of the Scythi, and they are going to ask not King Inazashi, but the protector Inazashi, to help them, another Scythi, a Scythi lord, to help them with soldiers and weapons and whatever could help them to kill this dragon who is already caught reading. What I was going to tell you, or what I was going to say, was I have talked in the past about how I never take offense in any way, shape, or form when people pronounce a word in my books, or a name, especially names, differently than what I personally use. And one of the reasons I've said that, pronounce names is wrong by my own rules, because I had come up with the name before I came up with the rules of the language from which that name springs. And I thought of this, and I'm mentioning this because the younger Scythi, for lack of a better word, royal brother, although they're not royal, they're not kings and queens. Inaluki's name has always been, I've always pronounced it Inaluki, and with an sound like INN at the beginning, like an inn where you stop for the night. But by the, way after I first came up with some of the ideas for the story of Dragonbone Chair, including many of the names, I began to formalize the language rules. And one of them was that I settled on the idea that it would be pronounced very much like the southern, the vowel sounds would be pronounced very much like the southern Romance language vowel sounds, namely Spanish, Italian, Portuguese. And as a result, the vowel sounds that I use for the Scythi are pretty much A, E, I, O, U. And which is all fine, except for Inaluki should actually be Inaluki. And we see this in this very book because we had just had two characters show up, Vinadarta and her daughter Vinaju. And they are both spelled with IN at the beginning of their names, Vinadartu and Vinaju, just like Inaluki. And they are pronounced in the way that, I standardized the pronunciation. But because I started using Inaluki's name long before, I'd have to stop every time and remind myself to pronounce it that way. So, Do you wonder that I don't take offense or even care at all when people pronounce a name wrong? No, I don't, because I do it wrong myself every time, and I'm going to be doing it tonight with not just Inaluki's name, but probably a few others as well. So anyway, if they were around long enough that, again, I had come up with the names before the production itself. Anyway, so after all this, the Sithi and Pamonkes, the two Sithi brothers, Hakatri and Inaluki, the titular brothers of the wind, along with Pamonkes, have been taken to by a roundabout but shortcut way to Mezutua, this other Sithi city. And that's where they are. They've come in through an underground river, and they have reached an underground lake. And in the lake, rising up out of the lake, is the remains of one of the great ships that brought the Sithi and the Tanukadaya to that. Most of their great cities were built sort of on top of these ships or out of these ships to begin with. So that's what's going on. So I'm going to start with this. This is Lake Starless, Vinaju announced, and the bright arch you see in the distance is the old gate. My grandfather once told me it is part of the hull of the great ship that founded Mezutua. So saying, she put down her pole at last and took up a paddle. The water was so calm that after only a few dips of the blade, we slid away from the fernlight passage. Soon after, we reached the glowing arch and the massive wall. The wall itself was high and smooth, slanting upward and away in a very gentle curve until it disappeared far above our heads. I was stunned to think that I was seeing the remains of one of the great ships of legend. The huge, smooth structure seemed not merely to rest upon, even with the glow from the archway. It was hard to see where that island ended, and whether more of the lake lay beyond it. The old gate, as Vinaju named it, was marked out in crystal tiles that glowed rose-pink and warm amber. At the center of the arch stood a gate many times our height, made of what looked to be witchwood, with hinges of metal. Vinaju left us there, accepting my master's thanks with a smile and a bow. However, it was not my master, Hakatri, she looked at longest as she turned to paddle back across the lake, but Inaluki, who stood staring up at the giant portal, unaware of her gaze. It was something I have often seen. Inaluki's elegance and beauty have captured many hearts, and will doubtless capture many more. By the time we had walked up the stony beach to the great old gate, a smaller door opened, and a company of Silverhome warriors came out to meet us. Silverhome, by the way, just a quick insertion. Silverhome is the translation of the name of Mezutua. That would be the equivalent of the mortal version of Mezutua. And a company of Silverhome warriors came out to meet us. My masters were recognized and treated with all due honor, although with a little obvious discomfort at their unexpected arrival. These guards led us up into the city proper, sending messengers ahead. We rode through Mezutua's broad, cobbled streets, which were lit at every crossing with rose and amber crystals like those around the gate, so that the entire city gleamed softly, like a dawn sky, though we were deep in the bowels of the stony earth. We saw many Silverhome clan folk in the streets. Most gave us courteous greeting, though some were too busy with singing or conversation to notice us. We were led to the site of witness and ushered quietly through the doors. Then we stopped to wait in the shadowy outer reaches of the great circular chamber. The walls of the site of witness are covered in intricate carvings, sweeping, stylized sculptures that portray Mezutua's long history. Hundreds of stone benches ring the center of the chamber, but when I first entered, all I could make out was the master witness itself, a great irregular spike of shining crystal called the shard. Its clouded, milky glow painted the faces of those at the center of the wide, bowl-shaped chamber. Roughly a score of these Zidaya nobles were gathered around a stone chair, and the one seated upon it, who could only be Inazashi. The Lord of Silverhome was tall and solemn as an eagle on a branch, his face lean and coldly stern. He was one of the oldest of my master's people. Only deathless Utuku, Amaterasu shipborn, and a handful of others had seen more years of life than he had. One other figure sat at the center of the sight of witness with Inazashi, on a bench only a few paces behind his stone chair. To my surprise and confusion, I could see that this small, hunched person was not Zidaya, but one of my own Tanukadaya folk, those of our changeling people who have been longest among the Zidaya look much like them, as I do, and as this bent figure did, though I never saw any Zidaya look so fragile and so defeated. "Who is that?" I whispered to my master. "Kai Unyu, Silverhome's other ruler," he told me. "But be silent now, Pamun. I fear this will not be a happy audience for any of us." Inazashi's celebrant herald called for my master and his brother to come forward into the light of the shard. Hakatri and Inaluki began the 6 songs of respectful request, Inaluki with his shoulders squared and head thrown back, my master in a more ordinary posture. But Inazashi curtly gestured them to silence. The Tanukadaya, Kai Unyu, barely seemed to be listening, his eyes fixed on his own clasped hands. If this unprepossessing figure was truly Inazashi's co-ruler, he seemed content to let the Zidaya lord lead the dance. "I will not ask what brings you here." Inazashi's voice sounded more sour than courtesy would usually dictate. "I think I know. Vinadarta and her lake folk have no doubt complained to the House of Year Dancing about something I have done, so you have been sent here to chide me, as though I were an errant child instead of a master in my own house." "Not at all, Sway and Azashi," my master said quickly. "Mortal men from Yin Azashai came to Azua because a dragon has killed many of their animals and some of their people as well. Yesterday it attacked those of us who came from Azua to look on it, killing several of our company and wounding more." Inazashi might have been expected to show surprise or utter some words of comfort or sorrow. He did not. "So you come not on behalf of your parents, but as advocates for mortal men? I suppose that is no surprise. Shall I tell you what those mortals said when they first came to me with their demands?" Hakatri looked surprised at the abruptness of this, but only nodded his head. "Of course, Lord Inazashi." "When my messenger told them I would not send an army of our folk to face this swamp worm, they replied to my servant, 'Then we will go to Azua, and hope to find a kinder reception from the king and queen of your folk.'" Inazashi leaned toward my master, eyes bright, and shoulders hunched so that he looked more than ever like a bird of prey. "Is that how your parents style themselves now, young Hakatri, as king and queen of the Zidaya?" "You know that is not so, my lord. It is merely a misunderstanding between the mortal tongue and our own, nothing to do with Azua or my sires." Inazashi straightened, pressing his back against the stone chair. "So, then, what brings you to me, if it is not to demand I bend my knee to Azua and its rulers?" "We came seeking your help, my lord. My brother—" Hakatri hesitated for a moment. "My brother and I rode to Serpent's Vale with a small company of hunters, not to fight the worm, but merely to see it and learn more about it. But it set upon We know beyond doubt that this creature is truly one of the great worms, deadly Hirohebi, too huge and fierce for our small hunting party. We hope, with your help, to prevent it from taking more lives." He wove his fingers together in a ritual gesture of kinship I had not often seen. "Taking more lives? It is not harm." Inazashi spoke calmly, but I could hear anger in his voice. "They are all safe here within the mountain. We have other ways in and out beside the Silver Way. You came by one yourselves, I am told. So we have no fear of this baleworm or anything else." "Then you are a rare leader indeed, my lord," Inaluki said sharply, "to be so certain of his subjects and their safety that he does not mind having a dragon in his dooryard." Hakatri gave his brother a swift warning glance before turning back to the master of Mezutwa. "A great worm is an enemy to all living things, Lord Inazashi," he said. "Surely we can find common cause in destroying a creature that cares nothing about clans, or even whether its victims are mortal or immortal." Inazashi's face now seemed to become, if anything, colder and more remote. Common cause, a noble sentiment. He turned suddenly to the silent Tanukadaya on the stone bench. "Do you hear, Lord Kai? What do you think of that?" For a moment Kai Unyu raised his eyes to Inazashi's, then looked down again, waving his hand in a gesture I did not recognize. "Lord Kai agrees with me," Inazashi said. "Yes, your common cause is a very noble sentiment indeed, if sparing in how it has been applied in the past by your house of year-dancing." "Insults," muttered Inaluki. "That is all this ancient tyrant will give us. We are wasting our time, brother." "I do not understand you, my lord," Hakatri said quickly and loudly, perhaps to distract from his younger brother's whispering. "How have the rulers of Azua failed you? When has any call for aid from Silverhome ever gone unanswered?" Inazashi gripped both arms of his chair as if to keep himself from leaping up. "When? Why, when the lands of Min Azoshai were given to the very mortals you came here to assist. Of course the creatures called men went to Azua to beg help, because it was your own grandsires who made them a present of those lands in the first place, lands which rightfully belonged to the Silverhome clan." At last I understood, although I am certain my master already knew the source of Lord Inazashi's bitterness. Long, long before I was born, one of the first and greatest of the Zidaya, Lady Azosha, had made her home on the hill Inazashi apparently coveted. She was of Inazashi's clan, but there had never been much love between them. When the great ship came to rest in the place where Mezutua would later be built, she had left the rest of her kinsfolk behind to make her own way in the new world. Perhaps because of this, when she reached her final days, Azosha bequeathed her lands to the mortal folk of Herne the Hunter. When the Silverhome clan disputed her right to do so, the matter at last came to my master's grandmother, Senditu, who was the Sa'ansara in Azua at the time, to make the decision. Senditu held that because Azosha had made her home there before Silverhome was built atop the bones of the great ship that brought them all, Inazashi's clan had no right to claim Azosha's land. This dispute with the master or his brother could do to soothe Inazashi's bitterness. But a moment later, a happier thought came to me. It would be useless for us to try to kill the great worm with so small a company, as my master himself had said. Since Inazashi clearly would not help, we would have no choice but to return to Azua. Near the Lord's chair was speaking now. He was young, at least by the standards of the Zidaya, but he spoke strongly. Father, surely this old feud should not be allowed to affect a situation of real need. The worm is an enemy to all of us. Silence, Yizashi, said his sire. You are not the lord of this place yet, and if you would be so craven as to give up your birthright for nothing, you may never be lord of anything. I have made up my mind. We will treat these visitors from Azua with courtesy. Our shared blood demands it. But I will not risk a single warrior in the pursuit of this monster. If it threatens the mortals who have usurped our lands, Lord Hakatri, then let those mortals help you warriors of Clan Saonsere to kill it. And with that he flattened his hands before him, signaling that the audience was over. What about Lord Kai? My master asked. He has not spoken. The look Inazashi gave him was bitter, but a smile played across his lips. Ah, of course, Genjiana's blessed legacy, my co-ruler. He turned to Kai Unyu, who seemed to shrink before his gaze like a piece of meat on hot stone. Do you agree, Lord Kai? Does my decision meet with your satisfaction? For a long moment the Tanuka Daya did not look up or meet his eyes. At last, in a voice so quiet that only those of us near the shard could hear him, he said, Yes, Lord Inazashi. His words might have been the rustle of blowing leaves. There! Are you satisfied now, young Hakatri? Inazashi demanded. All has been done, just as your ancestors of Year Dancing House intended. The rulers of Mezutwa are in perfect harmony. He rose then, and though he swayed a little at first, he waved away his son's help. I still have a few great years left in me, he said. I do not need to be propped up, nor do I need to take lessons from my own child. Inazashi clutched his robes around him and made his way slowly across the sea. His long legs and halting gait made me think of a shorebird stepping through the surf. The lord of Mezutwa held his proud head high until he had passed out of the great chamber, and we could see him no longer. A few moments, and led the one called Kai Unyu out of the sight of witness as well. With a guard holding each elbow, I thought he looked more like a prisoner than a monarch. What was the meaning of all that? I asked my master later. I understand that Inazashi is angry with your parents over the mortals, but who is Kai Unyu? I wish you would not ask me, Pamon, he said. It shames me to have to talk about it, and we are awaited at the table. Hakatri and his brother were being hosted in one of the great houses of Silverhome for the night. Not all the nobles of that city were as sour toward the Year-Dancing clan as their lord. The master of this particular house, Lord Gondo, had sent splendid suits of clothes for my master and Inaluki, though not for me. At another time I might have given way to my lord's reluctance, but the strange spectacle I had seen take place before the shard had confused and disturbed me. Please, master, explain to me. He sighed. You know of the parting, where Ituku's Hikadaya and our Zidaya separated themselves from each other. Of course, my lord, I said, although as with many bits of Zidaya history, I knew it because of what others had said, not because I had studied it myself. At that time, Genjiana, my great-great-grandmother, gave your Tanukadaya people mastery over 3 of the 9 cities. My astonishment was so great that I actually interrupted him. My people, Lord? The nightingale herself gave the rule to my folk? I had never heard this, had never even dreamed that my people might once have been set so high in the world. Hakatri nodded. Yes, it was agreed at the parting that they would rule over Mezutua Hikahikayo in the north. But Genjiana's decree, well, things did not go as she had hoped. Jinatsune, the city of the column, had vanished beneath the southern seas long before I was born, thrown down in the great earth-shake that had also demolished fabled Kementar, one of them. What happened, Master? He was clearly reluctant to go on. It is a sad and, to me, shameful story, Pamon. In Hikahikayo, the Tanukadaya were opposed from the first by Hikadaya loyal to Utuku, already styling herself a queen. Their attempt to throw down the Tanukadaya leaders failed, barely, and most of the Hikadaya left for Nakiga, Utuku's throne city. Today there are only a few of our folk left there, and the city is much diminished from its heights. But the other two? Jinatsune did better, and the Tanukadaya there ruled with the cooperation and help. Then the great calamity befell them, and the city was lost. You have not told of Mezutua yet, I said. Because that is the hardest, most unpleasant tale, he said. To put it as simply as possible, the Zedaya here in Silverhome never fully accepted Genjiana's ruling, and when Enazashi inherited rule of his clan from his father, he seized power back from the Tanukadaya. Again I was shocked. Against Genjiana's wishes? The nightingale's spirit had gone back to the garden by then, and though my foreparents made clear they did not support Enazashi's seizure of power, their only true resort would have been to take up arms against him, against their own kind. I fell silent. The unfairness of it seemed beyond understanding. You are saying Azua did nothing to stop this? I heard a little heat in my master's voice. They did not ignore it, Pamon. Their protests forced Enazashi to set up the former Tanukadaya ruler as a second monarch. But that was no more than a sop. Enazashi does not share his rule. Mezutua's Tanukadaya wield no power and are scarcely consulted. I recalled the sad, defeated look of Kai Unyu, and I understood. Worse even than being powerless was having it proved again and again in front of all Silverhome. I was silent as I helped my master dress himself in the finery Lord Gondo had sent. Any other night, I think, I would have been quite willing to sit and watch the gathering of Mezutua's nobility, but that evening I was restless and angry, though I did not entirely know why, and even gossip of outstanding quality did not much tempt me. My restlessness grew, and at last, when the banquet had all but ended, I went to my master's side and quietly asked his permission to go out walking in the city. Of course, Pamon, he said. Remember that we will leave again early in the morning. He paused for a long moment, then said, But I caution you not to go into the part of the city nearest the mines where the Tanukadaya live. Why, my lord? Have you forgotten that I am Tanukadaya too? It was an extraordinary thing for me to speak that way to my master, but I was troubled in a way I had never been before. Of course not, he said, but it can be dangerous sometimes. I had certainly never heard of a part of our home in Azua or any other great city called dangerous before. On any other night I would have stayed far away, but in that strange, unsettled mood, I felt almost defiant. I found out where the mines were from one of the other servants, a youth of my own folk, who also warned me to stay away, and then deliberately set out in that direction. I was so wrapped up in my frustration with what I had heard about Enazashi and the one-time Tanukadaya rulers of Silverhome that I hardly noticed my surroundings as I walked through the high-ceilinged thoroughfares of the underground city. I later learned that, to add to the shamefulness of Kai Unyu's treatment, Mezutua had been almost entirely built by the first generation of my own people who reached this new land. Many Zedaya of lesser rank were out on the wide boulevards, but they seemed little different to me than the nobles at the banquet I had left behind, full of merriment as they crowded the drinking places and public squares beneath the stone lights. Few of them seemed to notice me, which deepened my bleak mood. I did not know much about my master's ancestors beyond their names, but I knew Amaterasu and Iyunagato as well as I knew my own parents. It hurt my heart to think they would allow such a crime against my folk to go unpunished. I had always known them to be kind and honorable, especially Lady Amaterasu, and I knew my master to be the same, but that did not excuse the injustice I had seen. No matter how I turned it over and over in my mind, I could not find a satisfying explanation. So caught up was I in these thoughts that I did not notice at first that the stone lights were becoming farther and farther apart, though here and there a torch burned in a sconce at the place where two streets came together. Even the taverns had different signs, marked not with the Zedaya runes I could read, but in symbols I did not recognize. As I stood in the street before one of these shadowy inns, looking absently at a handful of young Tenukadaya males who huddled outside the door, I felt someone tug at my sleeve. Suddenly aware of my own obliviousness, I looked down to see a young girl of my own race, with a dirt-smudged face, looking back at me. She said something, but I could not understand her, and said so. "Don't go there," she said in clumsy Zedaya speech. I looked at the tavern. I wasn't going to. Why? They hurt you. She was staring at the clutch of young Tenukadaya outside the tavern, so I asked, "Do you mean those fellows? Why would they hurt me? I am Tenukadaya, too." She shook her head. "Not those clothes." "What do my clothes have to do with anything?" "Stand-up clothes," she said, tugging at my sleeve again. "Tall folk clothes. You go now." And as she said it, the group of male Tenukadaya began much darker here than near Lord Gondo's great house, but even by the light of the single torch I could see that they all looked strange, hunched, and crooked, many of them bent so badly their backs might have been broken. "Go," she said even more urgently. "Get hurt if you stay." The look on the young male's face quickly told me that she was correct, though I still couldn't understand why. I turned and walked of Gondo's palatial house. As I waited for my master there, I began to understand what had happened. "My clothes," the girl had said, "tall folk clothes." She meant that I was dressed like the Zedaya nobles, which seemed ridiculous to me, since I was still wearing the tattered garb I had worn trudging through mud and tangling undergrowth after Vinaju. But to the little girl and the mob of young males, I was dressed like one of the masters, not like the bent and broken underlings, who had doubtless become that way working in the mines of Mezutua. My own people had seen me as an enemy, I now understood. Only the kindness of a child had saved me from a... When my master at last left the banquet hall, he found me waiting outside, but though I rose to go with him, I stayed silent as we made our way to our night's lodgings in the uppermost floors of our host's high stone house. I could not sleep for some time after I was abed. Hakatri must have found a witness to use in Lord Gondo's house, for he told me the next day that he had spoken with his mother, Lady Amaterasu. I did not learn what she had said. It was not my place to ask, but the look on my master's face suggested it had not been a happy conversation. He would have told her about those who fell in Serpent's Vale, of course, which must have been hard for both of them. He did not know, of course, that worse news was to come soon. When the next day dawned in the world outside, marked in Mezutwa by the tolling of the famous gathering bell, we made our way back down to the old gate and across the underground lake. It was not pretty Vinaju who ferried us back through the fernlight passage this time, but a male youth of the Skyglass clan. On our return, we shared a meal in Lady Vinadarta's dwelling with Tariki Clearsight and the other survivors of Serpent's Vale. Then my master and his brother rose to say farewells, because Tariki and the rest were setting out for Azua. Lady Vinadarta came out with many of her clansfolk to bid them a good journey. Tariki took my master aside as the rest of the party mounted for home, his usually sunny face clouded with worry. "I beg you once more, my friend," he said, "leave Inaluki here while this stubborn idea after him, and later we can bring back enough warriors from Azua to be sure we can kill the cold drake." Hakatri shook his head. "When he is in a mind like this, he is liable to do anything. Do you recall the time in his youth that he swore he would fight Lord Kuroi over some innocent japery Inaluki took as an insult? I will always be grateful that the tall rider would not raise his blade against one so inexperienced, because I do not doubt that my brother would have been badly hurt at Kuroi's hand. No, Vinadarta and all her folk would not be able to restrain him in one of his fell moods. I must stay while this dark oath hangs over him, over all of us, to keep him from some fatal foolishness. Because of this, I beg you, old friend, to assure my wife that I now take her forebodings very seriously, and that I will be careful." "I do not think Lady Briseu wishes to hear such important words from me instead of yourself." "That cannot be helped." Tariki sighed, a rare open show of unhappiness. "So nothing can change either Inaluki's mind to remain or yours to stay with him?" Hakatri shook his head. "I have not yet seen any way to solve this puzzle my brother has set for me, old friend, but I have not given up hope." Or vaulting into his saddle, "Then I pray that the garden that waits for us all is not greedy for the company of Year Dancing House's two masters. Dear comrade, farewell." Prince Cormac had satisfied himself that his wounded hernsmen were recovering with the help of the Skyglass Lake healers, and now he too was making ready to leave the rippling walls of Vinadarta's settlement. For a moment, as he looked at Hakatri, Cormac's face changed in the swift way that mortals have, expressions coming and going like the wind setting ripples onto water. "You came to help us when you did not need to do so, Lord Hakatri," he said. "And Lord Inaluki too, of course. We herdsmen will not forget that. I wish you luck, though I fear you will need more than that." Lady Vinadarta stepped forward. "You know I am troubled by this dangerous oath of Inaluki's that somehow commands you both, Hakatri of the Year Dancing." She saw the younger brother scowl. "I can only speak honestly, young lord, whether it troubles you or no. But I beg you not to scorn my counsel. I wish no harm to come to either of you for the sake of your parents and our people. If you are truly determined to face the great worm again, without waiting for assistance from Azua, then I beg you to go and speak to Lord Zaniko of Raven's Perch. He is one of the few living folk who know about the killing of dragons." "Zaniko? Of the Hikidaya?" Inaluki was not happy with this suggestion. The one called the Exile? What use could he be, that we should go to him like beggars? He crudely insulted our father once. In truth, he insulted the entire court of Azua during a single audience, and was driven out, never to return. He has insulted many more than that, I am told, said Lady Vinadarta, with a wintry near smile. And not just those of our clans, but also his own Hikadaya folk many times over, even Queen Utuku herself. That is why he is called Exile, and can never return to Nakiga. Your pardon, lady, but I think this advice is foolish. Inaluki waved a dismissive hand and walked away. The mistress of Skyglass Lake shook her head. It is up to you, then, Lord Hakatri, to decide whether my idea is worthwhile. Zaniko makes his home in the northern end of these very mountains, in his high fortress, on a peak named the Beacon. My own people know the place and avoid it. We do not trouble him, and he does not trouble us. We herdsmen have taken much the same path with him, my lady, said Prince Cormac. And that is wise, she said. But you, Lord Hakatri, may wish to risk the exile's anger. If anyone can offer you wisdom about dragons, it will be Zaniko. There is no one alive who knows more about the ways of worms and the killing of them. Thank you for this counsel, lady. My master bowed. I promise I will give it much thought. Then, good fortune to you both. Vinadarta left us then, her people falling in behind her. I mourn your losses as much as my own, Cormac told Hakatri. My gratitude again for your aid. His words clearly discomforted my master. Do not credit me with anything more than looking out for my headstrong brother, young prince. So far we have done nothing to solve the problem that brought you to us. That is more than a problem, said Cormac. That is a dragon. One of the old and fatal ones, too. But perhaps a day will come when we will be able to hunt it together again, with better success. Perhaps that day will come sooner than you think, said Hakatri. If so, I will come to you at Mian Azoshai. We call our country Hernsland now. Cormac reached out and clasped my master's arm, surprising Hakatri a little. No other mortal man had been so easy and open with my master or his folk, at least during my time. And as long as I live, you and your brother will always be welcome there. And even though that's not a real cliffhangery kind of cliffhanger, that is a section end. So I'm going to stop there in that fairly calm moment before the next phase of things begins to happen. So let me just close that up. Beep, 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 beep. And with that, thank you for joining me. I don't know why I'm holding my hands like this. It looks really strange, but that's okay. I like looking really strange. Anyway, thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure, as always, to get to spend some time with you. I hope you will come and join me again next weekend. Again, as usual, I will almost certainly be reading at 1 a.m. Sunday morning and for the overseas crowd, and 7 p.m. Sunday evening for the underseas crowd. I don't know. So my Atlantean citizens out there, thank you again. Take good care of yourselves. That's the first and foremost thing, because you can't do anything else if you yourself are not okay and safe and healthy. So take good care of yourselves. Take good care of your loved ones and the folks around you that you care about most. But keep an eye out for the people that might need some help that you don't know that well, too, because they're all around us. With that, I will wrap it up. So see you next week. Be good, be well, and I will see you soon. Peace.